All right, here we are at the end of the semester with our Prosfolio. So first is how to think like a prosthodontist. For this, we talked about toasters and toilets and kind of that idea of thinking outside the box and new solutions to old problems, I guess. And it's super important in prosthodontics to think that way because there isn't just one way to do things. There isn't just one solution. And it's that innovation and thinking outside of the box that drives newer, better ways to do things. So it's always important to sit back and think, okay, why are we doing each step of this process, and is there a better way to do maybe some of those steps? To kind of illustrate that, we did this spaghetti denture project. This was mine. It's made out of paper mache. I remember as a kid I made piñatas out of paper mache, so I knew how to use it. And then I used hot glue to get the teeth to stick in, if you can see that. But so anyway, that was my problem-solving denture, the spaghetti denture. The second point is, what is it like to be a dentist? I've never been a dentist myself. But there's kind of this psychological aspect that we talked about where there's a lack of confidence. They may think people around them think less of them because they don't have teeth, or that they think they're lower class or whatever, and it can punch a hole in their confidence, basically. And there's that social aspect of it as well, that when they want to go out, they still think people are thinking those things when they go to eat, or things that they'll maybe have to take out their dentures at some point, and that will be embarrassing for them. And obviously there's the eating and function portion, that if they want to whistle, they want to chew, they want to suck on something, smoke, whatever it is, the denture can pose problems for that, or pop out if it doesn't have a good seal. And so it's not an easy thing to do and have a denture. So one of the things we did for that was make a selfie denture, this little guy that popped in, which made it a little bit harder to talk. And it kind of helped me understand what it was like to wear various prosthetics, and reminded me when I was a kid, I had a retainer, and I always took it out to eat, and I'd set it on my tray at school, and a few times I had to go back and dig through the garbage because I had thrown it away. And so having that all the time and not having a choice of whether or not you take it out to eat is not fun. Also, by wearing those appliances, they'll get sore spots. It's hard to clean. There's the function aspect, that maybe if you chew on it, you can't chew as hard on things and eat the same things that you used to like to eat. So all of those things pose real problems. The next concept that we kind of talked about was idealism. To do that, we drew the teeth on Heidi Klum, and we learned about how there's this evolution, that as we've evolved, we've been programmed to view certain things as ideal and healthy, and that when people have the right shade, the right color, or that's the same thing, the right shape, the right color, right positioning of teeth, we view that as more attractive and healthy, and advantageous for whatever reason. So each person has a different face and should have teeth that match those faces. We talked about macro, meso, and micro aesthetics. So the macro being the face to the teeth, where they are in relation to different points on the face. Meso aesthetics, where the teeth are in relation to the gums when they smile, when they have their mouth closed, where the teeth, and then micro aesthetics, where the teeth are in relation to each other. And all of those play an important role in that aesthetic outcome of teeth and where they're supposed to be. So the next part, I'll just walk you through some pictures of when we made our dentures. So first of all, right here, the process, the first step was to make initial impressions. So you can see that there, that was the mandibular arch of an initial impression, and the maxillary arch, initial impression. Then you take that, you pour it up in stone, and on that stone, you make a custom tray out of triad. This is, so the initial impression is to make that cast, and then that custom tray. The custom tray will fit a little bit better and give you a better impression when you do your master impression, which is the next step that you did with PVS. And so this was the heavy body being put onto the mandibular custom tray. That custom tray is then... So the reason why you use PVS is because it's a little more accurate, it's more stable, it doesn't shrink as much, and so you're able to get a better seal. You follow it up with some light body after you use that purple heavy body to get a real nice impression without any voids, and make sure you capture the anatomy and everything. With that, you'll then pour a second stone mold, and this time you're going to use a little bit higher quality stone so that the mold is even more accurate and will give you a better fitting denture. All these steps so far to make sure that the denture is capturing the anatomy correctly and fully, and so that the denture will stay in and be comfortable as well. So the next step was to make wax rims off of the custom trays you made off of the PVS stone impression. You wanted to make sure that it was kind of over the ridge, and that it was 6 millimeters in the front width-wise and 8 millimeters in the back, which was kind of a normal width for placing teeth. Then we took these, and using the dressed to the nines, or these 9 different aspects of mesoaesthetics, we went through and prescribed teeth. So anyway, I won't go through all of these, but very important step here. When we did it on Hermie, this was the final product. We had the midline there in the middle. That's where it should be. And the relation of the lips to the teeth and everything, I think we got it pretty good. Then to make sure that we could duplicate that and that we had everything, we did a bite registration that fit into these grooves, that we made sure we had the bite relation correct. Then we took it back and we set some teeth. So you'd then put it in your mold, and you'd find the midline, and you start with the maxillary typically, and you start setting those teeth. Get them in the right position and go back. Then you do the mandibular and make sure they occlude correctly. There's some overlap, overjet, and everything. So yeah, these were the ones I made for the mannequin. So I kind of walked you through some steps and pictures showing the real patient experience, but it was very similar for the mannequin. And again, we went through those same steps to get to the live patient experience. These are the 2 dentures I made though for Hermie. This one was the non-ideal set where I took the maxillary teeth, and as you can tell, they were set very lingual. And then those were my attempt at an ideal set. And these are pictures of her with them in. So that was the non-ideal set. You can see her upper lip was kind of sunken in and kind of gave her face an overall caved in look, and there's a lot of gums showing, so not a great look for her. And that was the ideal set that I did. I felt like the teeth were maybe a little bit big, but I think they were positioned pretty well, and the right amount showing. The zenith lines looked pretty good and everything, so I think I did a pretty good job. She didn't end up choosing them at the end of the day, but hey, I liked them. So anyway, that was kind of the picture portion of the presentation. On to resorption. So resorption is a real problem. When teeth are not present and there's not that loading on the bone, the body tends to look at that reservoir of nutrients, calcium and things, and say, well, we don't need that anymore, and pull it away. Typically the maxilla will resorb up and in, and then the mandible will resorb down and out, which obviously poses some problems where you want those dentures to come together. And as that resorption takes place, primarily in those first few months of being a dentulous, the denture doesn't fit as well because it was made for the arch before it was resorbed so much, and so it makes it hard for the denture to fit. And for long term, but also as the more it resorbs, the harder it is to keep a denture staying on because there's nothing to hold on to. Implants help a little bit with that, where the implants can help the dentures stay on it. They click onto it and physically hold it. Also, where those implants are, there's a little bit of loading on the bone, but you end up kind of getting this curved shape around high where the implants are, the bone's higher, and then it kind of slopes down and then goes back up where the next implant is. So resorption is a real problem in denture land. one of the things that you do to overcome that, or to not really overcome that, but to deal with that, are relines. And we talked about two kinds of relines in class, and with a third mixed technique. Direct chair side, which was very accurate. There's less shrinkage, less expensive, fewer visits, looks kind of homemade though, and it's weaker. Then there's the lab version where it's a little bit more accurate, I guess. More shrinkage, more expensive, takes 2 visits, looks more commercial, so it does look nicer, and it's stronger. But then Dr. Durham talked about kind of a middle ground thing. And these were the steps that he told us, is that first you make a shoulder margin so that, like with crowns, it's flush. There's not this like edge that comes to where things can get underneath there and chip off. So you try to make that nice clean edge. Use some air abrasion or something to roughen up the surface of the denture. You line it with some bond. Then you do a thicker material, acrylic material, around the outside and into the vestibule, because you want that to kind of go up and hold its shape. And then a lighter or thinner material in the middle to create more of a section and to really get into those more fine anatomy of the palate. Then when you put it in, you do the P90X smearing around and get it up in there, and try to make sure you get all the air bubbles out. Then once you do that, you get a pretty good seal. The video we watched showed that sealed really well. And when you pull that out, you should use a diamond polisher to clean up the edges. He said it was kind of like glass almost at that point, and will just shatter if you use the typical acrylic burrs. So that middle step kind of gives you some best of both worlds, where it's quick, one visit, stronger, still looks good. Anyway, seemed like a pretty good solution to me. We'll see how it goes when we do those. Next was rebasing. I watched a video on this because I didn't quite understand how it would work in class. But it looks like a pretty complicated process where you take an impression, send it to the lab with a denture, they make a mold with the denture on it, then they set it in a different mold and make a negative impression of that, and then cut off the base and then leave the teeth in place, and then they fill that void in with more acrylic and then pull it out. So it's kind of a long process, but looks like it worked pretty well. I could see how that would help fix that problem, and the denture wouldn't be as thick at that point, be a little bit more comfortable for the patient. So that was a really cool technique. Then next was repairs. So if a tooth just chips or things, you could do a in-office composite restoration to just get that together. If the teeth were to fall out, we learned to kind of, if these are teeth, you just, where the teeth was, take away a little bit of acrylic, and then just take some snap acrylic, put it on the end of a new tooth, and kind of sit it in there and smooth it all out and everything. And that, from what I understand, seems to work well, especially if you have diatorics in them. Hope I said that right. Let's see. Then if the base were to break, we talked about there's some reinforcement that you can do with little wires or whatnot, but also kind of beveling the edges and putting composite in that, or not composite, acrylic in that, to kind of bring the edges together. You can make it look really nice, make it strong. So anyway, that's repairing. Then professional interactions with patients. This is a really big one for me. I believe a lot in the relationship that you have with your patients. I think it's incredibly important to find that balance of professionalism with friendship, where they feel comfortable coming to you and they view you as a friend, but that they don't pass that line, that they still take your advice and view you as a doctor. And I think that how you treat them, a lot of times we think that if I'm just a quality dentist and I do quality work, people will come to me. Yeah, it's partly true. In the fact that if you were a horrible dentist, people wouldn't come back because they recognize that. But I think what's more important is how you treat them. That's where your perception of being a good dentist comes from. So very important to be professional. Running low on time, so I'll blow through these last couple. What would you do to improve the edentulous experience for patients? These are a few things I observed. I think it's always important to have chapstick or Vaseline on hand. Dry lips and being stretched and all those kinds of things isn't comfortable. I'd explain the steps as you do them. I think that instills confidence in the patient, explaining why you're doing each step, that ultimately this is for the best possible fitting denture, and that sure, it takes a long time, but it's really in their best interest. I think as a patient, I'd be thinking, man, this takes forever. Flavor things when possible. I think some of the stuff we used had some pretty gross tastes, so trying to make that a better experience would help. Let's see. I think it could be good to use a virtual software to show them a potential after picture during treatment planning phase, so that they see that and say, wow, that's what I could look like later. Because that's ultimately, I think, what's most important to the patient most of the time. And then an innovation you can imagine. I don't know how practical this is, but I think it'd be cool if they could make initial impression trays with like a pliable wax of some kind, that when it was cooled in water it would be hard and stay in place, but that you can maybe just throw it in a microwave real quick and it would soften up and be very pliable. And on that tray would be preset teeth, and you could get trays in different colors, or not so much colors, but different sizes of teeth, different sizes of arch and things. And then when you try and do that initial impression, you just do the initial impression with PVS, because the range of trays would be more accurate. And you just put that in at the beginning with PVS, so you get a good seal and everything. And because of the malleability and pliability of the material, you could even just set the teeth at the same time and kind of get them almost like a final try-in denture on their first appointment. And then you could, once you get the teeth all in the right spot, you just run it under some water real quick and it would solidify. And then you could send that to a lab and have them make a real denture out of the one that you just had. So that was an idea I had. And anyway, that was my Prosfolio. I hope you've enjoyed it. Learned a lot this semester. Anyway, thanks.